भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। अध्यक्ष महोदय, हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगा, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हैं? देश की सुरक्षा है।
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया।
Say Jai Hind. Thank you for taking the right stand. This word Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen, means a lot. You ask any man, any person, any woman, anybody in uniform what Jai Hind means. Ask any soldier what Jai Hind means. And then they will tell you the story of our history, how blood was spilled to save it and protect it. The beauty of Bharat, ladies and gentlemen, is that our forces adhere to the Constitution. They don't run amok and control the Constitution and its various pillars like over in neighboring Pakistan and some of the other places in this region itself. The fact is, the forces can never be faulted. The forces were 31 kilometers from Lahore, but they were pulled back. The forces had 90,000 POWs in 1971, but they were asked to free them. The forces were ready to build reinforcements and to scale up soon after Bharat got independent. But the message given is कि हम तो अहिंसावादी हैं. Who's going to attack us? Despite the fact that the political person who was heading that arm had written a letter back in 1950, October of 1950, if I remember correctly, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm talking about Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And he wrote it to the Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And the message was very clear. This letter was perhaps one of his last communiques before Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel passed away. And he said, don't trust the Chinese. Their words are deceptive. Their attitude is abhadrapurn. This was Sardar Patel's warning that your biggest enemy is China. Because Sardar Patel had said, take the Tibet and the five-finger warning seriously. Nehru had always brushed it aside, saying that they took Tibet is unfortunate, but they are not going to come down the Himalayas. Why will they come? This was his thought perception. Ironical, ladies and gentlemen, we always turn around and say, why dig up the past? The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, when we bury it, when we don't remember our history, when we are made to forget our history, when we are made to say, why rake up the past? Because had we learnt our lessons in 1949, when Mao Zedong talked about one China, when the Communist Party laid down under his vision a 100-year plan which included Tibet and of course the Five Fingers, that included Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh, Nepal, Bhutan, we would have woken up with great alarm. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the political fight, we've got big news coming through. The news coming through right now. It's a CNN News18 mega exclusive that India will not leave from its territory. We have claim on all parts. We are patrolling. Top government sources are saying our claim will remain as is on every inch. We are patrolling. We will not move back and will fight. Arunachal matter is over for now, but we can't rule out escalation again. We will resolve these issues diplomatically. We will talk militarily and diplomatically both. Our soldiers fought well and perfect reply was given. We maintain that their claims are wrong and we will continue to patrol our areas. We don't see any full-scale war on this issue. Two main reasons. Now, this is what the intelligence analysis is, that Xi Jinping is domestically on the back foot because of the COVID escalation. He was forced to give and relent, given to the massive protests. And the Northeast is vulnerable because here terrain is very uneven. We are on the low in many areas, and China understands that if they manage this area, they can cut this part from the rest of the world soon, carve it out. Now, this has always been their agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Since 1949, they have had this agenda. Imagine when they were trying to build a road across Aksai Chin. The map of 1842 drawn by the British themselves made Aksai Chin an integral part of Bharat. They were building a road then, and we looked the other way. In fact, the Prime Minister of that time, later, a few years later, turned around and said, and that too, nobody even knows where Ladakh is on the map, not even a blade of grass grows there. So our history should teach us a lot of lessons, not to trust this entity. And this entity only understands might. They do not understand softness. If they hit you once, you turn back and hit them 4 times, push them back 5 feet, and you stay those 5 feet. You don't come back. That's the mistake we have done. That is the mistake so far we are given to understand we have been doing. Because this disengagement means you go back to your position. Point is, they are in our positions over the last many decades. Let's take it back inch by inch, just like they have taken inch by inch. If we have the political will, our forces can do it. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. The soldier on the ground has stood to defend every inch of Bharat. But if the soldier on ground is told to hang back and say, don't do anything, don't build infrastructure, don't modernize, don't become efficient, because वहाँ सड़कें नहीं बनेंगी तो वो अंदर नहीं आ पाएंगे. Well, this was the thought till the early 2000s. And Mr. A.K. Antony is on record in 2013 saying it कि हमने सड़कें बनानी शुरू कर दी, इसीलिए चीनी upset हो रहे हैं. So till 2000 we were not building infrastructure. Let's get into our political fight, because this is a legacy war. Aparajita Sarangi, national spokesperson of the BJP, she's also an MP, joins us. Waris Pathan, national spokesperson of the AIMIM, with us. Namaste. वारिस पठान, कोई आपके घर में घुसता है तो आप क्या करोगे? उसको मार के भगाओगे ना? After that, what?
देखो आनंद, first and foremost, I salute the Anand. Now may I?
Yes, please.
Anand, first and foremost, I salute the brave soldiers who hit the Chinese so well that they had to run away from Tawang. Secondly, our question is to the Prime Minister of our country. Why is he silent? Why is he not showing the Lal Aankh or the 56-inch chest? When the Chinese are every now and then they are trying to enter into territory, and mind you, Anand, they did not. It was not on the border. They climbed 17,000 feet and they were trying to enter into our territory. Our question is simple. This happened on 9th. The engagement took place on the 9th. 10th, 11th, 12th evening, one of the newspapers reported the incident, and that is how the entire country came to know that this thing happened there. On the 13th, today, the defense minister comes before the parliament, makes a statement. We were asking why not to have a debate? Why should we not have a debate on the Chinese? Why are we shying away from it? Let the entire nation wants to know what is India's policy against Chinese aggression. Again and again, they are entering into our thing. Are we not doing something bad? Our military is facing threat from the Chinese. See, we are worried about our people, our military, our Jawans who are there in the border. We are proud of them because they are stationed there. You, me and everybody can sleep peacefully in our place. But today the question is, now when the Prime Minister Modi said, na kisi ko gusa hai, na kisi ko ghusne dunga. So why is this happening? Their own BJP leader said that 8 to 10 of the Indian soldiers got injured
एक मिनट, घुसने
Some
नहीं
of the
दिया।
Chinese also got injured.
घुसने
Their
नहीं
own
दिया।
people say in Arunachal Pradesh, in Dipshong, in Dipshong and Demshok, they're already there. They say that they have made
Demchok-
around 30 to 40 kilometers inroad into these places.
No,
and they have
Demchok
made
is not in
roads, they have
Arunachal.
made roads, they have made an entire village.
Demchok is not in
No, I'm
Arunachal.
talking about Arunachal.
This is
They have
Arunachal and this
also
is the
come
Yangtze
Demshok
region.
and
No,
Demshok.
this is the Yangtze
I'm
region.
talking about
Sir.
earlier. I am speaking about the earlier statement made by their own BJP leaders from the Arunachal Pradesh. The president himself says that they have entered. We have seen the videos. The entire country has seen the video. So why is the prime minister silent? That is why we say there is ambiguity. Let the parliamentarian go there. Let a committee be formed. Let Madam also, who is sitting here as the BJP spokesperson, be a part of that committee. Let us visit the place. Let us see what actually happened there. Similarly, Galwan happened. Ladakh
नहीं
also.
तो आपको वहाँ पे आप वहाँ जाएंगे,
And
आपको
our Prime
आपको
Minister is
आपको
going there and
वीवीआईपी
shaking
सिक्योरिटी
hands.
नहीं, आप वहाँ जाएंगे, पूरी पार्लियामेंट्री कमेटी जाएगी, उसके लिए स्पेशल चार्टर्ड फ्लाइट बुक कराएंगे, वीवीआईपी सिक्योरिटी करवाएंगे, स्पेशल गाड़ी करवाएंगे, फौज का काम ये सब मैनेज करना होगा ना। आपके लिए खाना पीना चाहिए होगा, कपड़े चाहिए होंगे क्योंकि ठंड पड़ी होगी, इतनी ठंड में कैसे जाएंगे? हाउ विल वी गो इन सच कोल्ड? सो यू विल हैव टू गिव अस प्रॉपर वार्म क्लोथिंग, यू विल हैव टू अलाउ अस, गिव अस 2-3 days to acclimatize. So and how can it be? It will not be a parliamentary committee of 1 or 2 people, but 15 members have to go. They will all go. So the Fauj will take care of the netas who want to go and see कि वहाँ क्या हुआ, ये कहाँ पे लाइन है, किधर मारा, कहाँ तक भागे और कहाँ पे आए, फिर वापस आके नहीं हम जाके देख के आए. So this is what you want them to facilitate, rather than making sure that the infrastructure is robust and make sure that जहाँ तक गए वहीं पे रुकेंगे, अब आके चीनियों को और पीछे खदेड़ेंगे. No, I am just trying to understand what's your priority. Aparajita Sarangi, the question that Waris Pathan started with is a valid one. If the incident happened on the 9th, why did the country come to know about it via a media report on the 12th?
Our actions speak louder than the words. See what happened on the midnight of 9th December. Around 3 a.m., it was not even midnight, beyond midnight, 300 Chinese soldiers came onto our side, and then 70-80 of our people, our Indian soldiers, actually combated so well that they had to go back to their posts. So today is the day when we all need to gather together and in one voice commend the efforts of the Indian soldiers who are in this cold, stationed there, and who are guarding our frontiers, who are in the Yangtze area of Ladakh. Now at this juncture, what is the situation like? The situation is that there have been skirmishes, stick and cane fight, and all these people, all the Chinese people have been sent back to their posts and status quo has been maintained. Now this is the effort of the Indian Army and we all need to congratulate them. The Defence Minister in the Parliament today have given his statement and the statement was extremely clear. I think all of us have heard that.
My simple question is, Aparajita
We
ji,
actually
Aparajita
went
ji
for
is,
timely action in a very firm
Aparajita
and
ji,
resolute
had
manner.
the story not appeared on the media, on a
Yes.
newspaper, would the government have let Parliament know?
I fail to understand what's the need of publicizing this particular thing when our Indian soldiers have already acted in the matter and the Chinese people have been thrown the other side. So I fail to understand why should we be publicizing the whole thing. See, when the issue came up for discussion, the Defence Minister had the courtesy and had the courage to bring all the facts on the table and apprise the House that, you know, the situation is under control, nothing to be tensed about. We are actually working in the matter. This is how the government has to behave. You know, this is related to the defense of the country, and when the defense of the country is involved, when the borders of the country is involved, which is so very
when
porous.
Parliament is in session, Aparajita ji,
Yes,
you're a Lok Sabha MP. When Parliament is in session,
Absolutely, yes,
2 years after Galwan, when there is another skirmish which has happened with 8 or 9 of our soldiers are injured, why is it that the government did not issue a statement and say this was attempted by the Chinese and we've pushed them back and we are now holding that very ground? Now that's where the first question that the AIMIM started with, Waris Pathan started with. Now, was the government intending to make it public, or was the government's hand forced?
when the issue came up for discussion, when the issue was raised, then the defense minister came forward and gave the statement. This is something which has been taken care of, and it was not such a big deal. You know, our people, our soldiers are trained enough to handle such skirmishes. In fact, many of these skirmishes we are aware of, many of these skirmishes we are not aware of. So the point remains that when it was required, the defense minister with all courage and with all candidness came forward and gave his statement. I think this should be appreciated. And when the defense minister talks, I think we all need to believe him.
No, nobody is saying.
No.
One minute.
Let me tell you, no.
One minute, Aparajita ji. Nobody has said
just give me 30
that
seconds.
we do not believe the Raksha Mantri.
Yeah.
What the Raksha Mantri has said, nobody is saying we do not believe. We are asking, and the question that's been asked by the opposition today, and I am also asking the same question, that as a Bharatiya citizen, as a Nagrik, if there is an attack on my soil by these people, this group, that is the PLA and the CCP, led by Xi Jinping at this point in time, who have been called out way since 1950 by the likes of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and this is 2 years after Galwan, then the government should have been prompt and should have come up and answered this. My point is, ma'am, that did the government not warrant it or deem it important enough to let the country know? Because had India said it out first, had India claimed it first, then we would have claimed a massive psychological advantage over the Chinese and also further push them into a corner, because that's what they are trying to do all the time with us. This is a psyops game at various levels. And they dare to lay a finger on our soldiers.
I as a citizen of the country today is very sad. Now you will ask me why. You know, today is the day when we should actually commend the efforts of the Indian Army. They have done the job, and it was done so stealthily, so very well, that it did not come out into the open, and these things should be handled in such a manner. These are very sensitive issues. You know, these things cannot be discussed in the parliament or in the market or anywhere else.
Why is it sensitive, ma'am?
So my point is that
your point of view is that we should not make this public. But when it comes to that is why it should be made public, so that everybody knows what the Chinese are and what their inherent nature is. That is something which we need to know. And this is exactly what they have been trying to do since 1950, and they will not stop. That's the whole point. But Waris Pathan, once the clarification has been given, then why continue to badger and push it forward? You don't trust the forces that they would have done a fair job?
Anand,
no, when you say that you want to go down to see, that means you don't trust the forces.
Well, Anand, I was just listening to Madam. Let me correct her. Madam said just now that after the discussion, Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, made the statement on the parliament floor.
No, I am saying there was no discussion in the parliament.
We were asking for a discussion, madam.
Shri Rajnath Singh ji has made a statement. You are asking for discussion, I am aware of it.
We were asking, we are asking for a debate and discussion
Mr. Pathan, you have heard me wrong.
We are asking for a debate and discussion on this issue.
Please try to understand what I said.
No, I heard you properly. Madam, we can rewind the tapes and we can hear it.
Need not be discussed in the
tape is very much available with the CNN people.
Sensitive matters need not be
discussed. We were asking for a debate on that.
When the matter was raised.
Why
one minute. I have just one humble. I have just one to Waris Pathan. One minute. Aparajita ji and Waris ji. 1 minute.
Whatever the
one minute,
minister had to say has been said.
One minute, ma'am. I have just one humble request.
I have just said that discussion.
No, she didn't say discussion. You misinterpreted what was said. What I am trying to say is, in fact, the question hour was disrupted because there were some inconvenient questions to be asked of the Congress party. That's a different point. My simple point is, Waris Pathan, let's just go back and remember our history. There were voices and conscience keepers who have warned China, warned India and the parliament and the people about China and its inherent nature. Let us not try and unnecessarily scrape and try and look for politics. Let's just back our forces. And I have only one request of the opposition. Tomorrow onwards, you should demand that the government makes it a standard policy that every time we push the Chinese back, we don't step back. We push them back and we stay there. This is what they have done for the last 70 years. So, you push them back, don't disengage. You push them back, you don't disengage. You push them back, don't disengage. Let's try and change our posture and our stature. That's the first one. The second one, ma'am, there may be other reasons which you would say that you are sensitive and you would want to keep it close. But with regards to China, the country must know. Every single Indian needs to know how treacherous this nation is and its policies are. That's my humble request. I thank you both for joining us. Let's quickly move on, ladies and gentlemen, and let's very quickly set up and give you an overview of this 3 a.m. clash that took place on the 9th of December. Now, it was a stealth operation that was conducted, and it was done by the Chinese troops. They came in slyly, and of course, over 300 PLA troops intervened in the Yangtze region. The attempt was to capture icy heights at about 17,000 feet, because the watch patrolling happens at 14,000 feet. So if you capture 17,000 feet, you don't need to patrol, you can watch from there. Now, initially there were only 50 Indian troops. Reinforcements rushed. Over 100 Indian troops gathered. Despite being outnumbered, they really smashed the Chinese and pushed them back. Now, this is something I'm very proud of our bravehearts, and they always do it. They should do more. In fact, what they should do is they should go up to the 17,000 feet and say, now we're going to sit here, do what you want. Now, Indian Army pushed back hard at the Chinese troops. Chinese soldiers were given a bloody nose. PLA was pushed back all the way to the command post. They should have been pushed back a little more, and we should have said, now we will sit right next to you on the command post. The warning has been issued in the flag meeting 2 days later. So the flag meeting happened 2 days later. And thereafter, the whole matter has come to light. So many would question the secrecy. Now, it happened in a place called Yangtze, about 30 kilometers northeast of Tawang. Now, India has been building border infrastructure, and so have the Chinese. Both have been building up. Now, China is building a dam around the Yangtze River in certain parts. It's part of their hydroelectric projects, etc. Now, the clash happened on the night between the 8th and 9th of December. That is also result night, ladies and gentlemen. Here, with elections which were happening, that was also the time when the G20 summit was happening in our country. About 300 Chinese troops tried to capture the icy heights around Yangtze. Then, if either side manages to capture the heights at 17,000 feet, it would give them a visibility up to 25 to 30 kilometers on each side. Hence, there is no need for patrolling in the winter months. The Yangtze is the same place where similar attempts have been made by the Chinese for height domination. In October 2021, in 2016, they keep trying. Modus operandi similar to Galwan, no lethal weapons. They had clubs, they had sticks and machetes, because the LAC agreement says there will be no firearms that will be used. Now, 6 Indian soldiers were injured, higher number of PLA soldiers were hurt. There are no fatalities, and none of our, as the Raksha Mantri said, none of our soldiers are grievously injured. Now, China has been building settler villages populated with veterans opposite the Yangtze, and they've built Zhaokang, which was used as a launch pad. There are 600 such villages which have been built. Now, the point is, there have been reports often and times that there are places or there are villages which are being made, but these settlements are on the other side of the LAC. So even if we know that these settlements are coming up, we can't do much about it till they act and they try and transgress. 600 such earlier villages across this entire 3,500 kilometer line. So it's a long line. Now, Tawang is one of the most sacred places of Tibetan Buddhism. The Dalai Lama was born here. Successor to the current Dalai Lama, His Holiness, could also hail from Tawang. So Tawang is also another reason why every time a premier of our country has tried to visit Tawang, China has raised objections. And of course, five-finger policy, they claimed Arunachal as part of it. In 1962, the Chinese had come down to the plains all the way beyond Tawang up to Bomdila. But then when the war ended and the treaty was signed, they were pushed back and then they stopped at Bumla. Now, the simple point is, this trust, it was never there, but now has it been lost forever? Lieutenant General KJ Singh is with us, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra is with us, and Andrew KP Leong is also with us. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Jai Hind, sir. Jai Hind. General KJ Singh, do we forget our history so fast? do our forces and our politicians, do they not study history, sir?
Anand, they study and they choose to forget also. Thank you for having me on your show. This is a day where we should all say Jai Hind very loudly, stand behind our armed forces. And if you're talking of history, let me start by saluting Captain Robert Bobka Singh, the soldier, the brave officer from Assam Rifles who chose to defy his own bosses in a way and planted India's flag at Tawang. And since then, Tawang is ours. Before that, our claim was, it could be questioned, but he made the second most important seat of Tibetan religion India's territory. He put our flag over there. So, saluting Robert Bobka Singh, the Manipuri Assam Rifle officer. And you're right, history must be remembered. And we should not, like you say, we should not feel less. After 62, we should remember 67. We don't even call it an operation as yet. It was Nathula and Chola,
Correct.
where Chinese were given a bloody nose and told that 62 is over. And then we had Sumdrong Chu, then we had this Doklam, and now Kailash. And I would subscribe to your theory that once you get a height like Kailash, don't pull back. You can't do it with Chinese, because Chinese cannot be trusted. So history has to be remembered. And beyond that, we have to also build the geography in our field, which we are doing eminently well at this stage. And that is because all these things are happening. And in my perception, Anand, this was not like Galwan, but this was also not like earlier incursions or transgressions in Yangtze, because the numbers were higher. It is in the month of mid-December now. So China is willing to do it in such adverse weather. And thirdly, barbaric weapons are still being used. So those hammers and those machetes are still being used.
That's for the no-fire rules, no? Because you're not allowed to have short-arm fire, or this one, so bullet. So that's why no-fire rules. So you are using clubs, you're using machetes, hammers, which don't come under that category. So they're trying to read into the lines as far as the agreement that we have with them.
But Chinese don't respect any agreements. They defy whatever they want, because there are conventions that we won't have such build-ups. We won't have 300 people like this. But they just throw it to winds. So we have to remain vigilant. Like what you are saying, we must all be conscious, aware and vigilant.
Andrew, would you look at it as an attempt to try and deflect attention from the protests back home for Xi Jinping, the pressure that he's finding? Then, of course, the Kabul attack, where again the Uyghurs have claimed, ISIS has said that it is in support of the Uyghurs. I'm asking Andrew K. P. Lung. I'll come back to you, sir. General Singh. Andrew, hi, can you hear me?
Hello?
Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Yes.
Andrew, the question was for you. Now, is this to try and deflect attention from the trouble back home? And also what happened in Kabul, where the ISIS came out and linked it with Uyghurs?
Can I respond to this?
Yes, please.
Well, I think that this latest border crashes comes at a time when India-China relations is getting from bad to worse. And for example, there is also disputes over water flows from the Himalaya, and then of course this border crashes also is a repeat of earlier incidents. That's in spite of the fact that both leaders, the leaders of both countries, have already expressed their agreement that both sides do not want a war and both sides need to de-escalate. But the problem is the line of actual control is not clearly defined, and I think that the commanders on the ground on both sides can easily err on the side of maybe aggression. So I think that these matters need to really discussed by both sides, because there is
do you know the difference between
brownie points?
Andrew,
these brownie points of
Andrew,
how many people are equal on each side.
Andrew,
it's very childish.
Do you know the difference between
two large powers?
I'm going to check if you can hear me. Do you know the difference between patrolling at 14,000 feet
Hello?
and trying to capture a peak at 17,000 feet? Do you know the difference between the two? No commander will make an error like that.
Well, I think it's not just the difference. It's really the kind of attitude of the
PLA.
Both countries.
The PLA. Sorry, say the PLA. It was the PLA which wanted to go to that peak and control it.
The matters need to be discussed.
They wanted to do it in October 2021. They attempted it. They attempted it in 2016. They attempted it again. Now that's not a patrolling error, because the perception of the LAC is open to interpretation. This was planned. When you go armed with machetes, when you go armed with clubs, and you go with 300 strong people, and you are climbing 3,000 feet above your patrolling levels of 14,000 feet to 17,000 feet, then you are doing it with a very, very nefarious intent.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Hello.
We'll try and connect with Andrew. We'll try and connect with Andrew again. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. Sir, very humbly, sir. ये चीनी नहीं बदले हैं. ये वैसे ही हैं. The Chinese have not changed. The PLA has not changed. Can you hear me, sir? The PLA have not changed. The CCP has not changed. From Mao Zedong to Xi Jinping, their funda is very clear. Problem is somewhere with us that we are not able to understand.
Well, you are absolutely right, Anand, in reading China correctly. I wish as a nation we would stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. As far as the previous panelists' contention is concerned and China's contention is concerned, that LAC is not clearly defined. That's why these clashes happen. What happened to LAC being defined before 2013? Before that, there were no clashes or no clashes of this nature. That the Chinese troops transgress into Indian territory, and then they say that, LAC is not clearly defined. In fact, we have repeatedly been being apologists for China in many senses. The 2013 incursion into Depsang, China explained away by saying that, look, that's nothing. And they explained it 1 year later in 2014, when Chinese president at that time, Xi, was visiting. And it's strange that all this has started after Xi became the president. Before that, it was relatively calm on the LAC and along the Indo-China border. So the questions we have to ask ourselves is that why do we agree to the Chinese claim that LAC is not clearly defined? That's why our troops may have gone into what we say is our territory and what India claims is their territory. So somewhere down the line, we have to put our foot down that this excuse will not wash. The second thing is that we should stop giving benefit of the doubt to China. When President Xi was here for the first time in 2014, and there was an incursion into the Indian territory, we said, look, he didn't know that this was happening. This was all being done at a local level by local commanders. And the moment he knew, everything stopped. That is not true, because nothing in China moves without approval of the highest authority. In this case, President Xi. Otherwise, he wouldn't have promoted those officers to higher ranks at the recently concluded party congress.
Correct.
The other thing is that the more we give in, the more emboldened they will become.
Yeah.
And you are quite right also to bring in the domestic factor into the entire equation.
Yeah.
Because she has had a not a good time in confronting the protesters against COVID restrictions. So he knows that his prestige has been dented. He needs to now somehow come up with things which take away the attention from what is happening domestically, both in economic terms and in his handling of administrative issues within. So gaining some territory at the expense of India could be one. It is just speculative reasoning, but it may just be the reason why this incursion has happened. The second thing is that we knew for the last couple of months that Chinese have been building villages which were an alibi for their defense preparation. There are also reports that Chinese have built 200 camps in Dapsang Valley. So all this is not good news. And we as you said very correctly, that we as a nation now need to change our stance vis-a-vis China. I don't mean that launch an aggression, but I do mean that we should be able to back up our soldiers and our army to the hilt when it comes to pushing China back into what we think
but the other thing is
rightful
the other thing is I have limited time, but General KJ Singh and also Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, one aspect with the Chinese is that when you indulge in braggadocio, when you talk up too much, when you say too much, the Chinese don't like it. It always works when you operate silently. You have a clear path and you operate silently. General KJ Singh, do you think that the Indian politics today, the government today, along with the forces, should have a carte blanche instruction given that every time you move in, you gain or you push back, you stay what you have gained, you take it back, you don't give it back. You treat the Chinese just like they treat you on ground.
I think...
and don't make a song and dance about it. No need to make a song and dance about it, but then start doing it hard on ground.
No, Anand, I'll tend to agree with you, because in Kailash we learned this lesson. Because we had that pressure point with us, Chinese came to negotiation table, there was certain amount of de-escalation which took place, certain amount of de-induction also took place from finger 4 to about finger 8, but with no patrolling zones, and some resolution took place in other places. We have somehow find this method, and somewhere all our parties have to also mature up and have these discussions, not in public, but maybe government can call them separately, have this discussion, explain the nuances to them, because public doesn't need to be informed beyond, it needs to be informed about the general basics.
Correct.
But beyond that, sensitivities can be shared in a confidential kind of briefing, and we can have national consensus on that. We must have that, and we should not give in like this, because Chinese have done salami slicing with us. They have crept up. So wherever we manage to sort of reclaim, that we should hold, and we should not allow them to make it, they want to change alter the realities on the ground. That's how they are working.
No, and catch them where they are not aware. Let us slice back, because again LAC is open to perception, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, and we don't need to tell anybody what we are doing.
Well, you are absolutely right on this score, that we need to balance the equation, and we have not been balancing the equation. The second thing is whether there should be a debate in Parliament. Well, Parliament is meant for debate. The third thing is whether we should inform the public and the Parliament about where we stand on actual ground. Now, there are two things here. Firstly, no country in the world tolerates even an inch of territory being taken by an enemy, unless it is too weak. Secondly, in today's age of satellites, you cannot hide the fact that Chinese are sitting at a particular point. And if that particular point happens to be Indian territory, then it is open knowledge to everyone, be it in Faridabad or down in Chennai somewhere. All he has to do is Google. So you cannot keep Chinese incursion a secret any longer. And that is what has happened in the latest incident. Also.
But the irony is largely all their infrastructure development is all happening on territory that they have seized from us, sliced from us over the last 7-8 decades. So that's also ironical that it's all on Indian territory anyways. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra and General KJ Singh, thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to take a very, very short break. When we come back, Lieutenant General D.B. Shekhardkar takes the right stand. Very easy.
I'm cutting across party lines. The Trinamool Congress, Owaisi, Congress Party, all of them are in the mood to get out the government. One, they want a short duration discussion on this. Second, they want it to be concluded by a statement from the Defence Minister. And third, the Prime Minister must be present inside the House. In fact, the main target of attack is the Prime Minister because they accuse him of hiding the facts, not admitting that these have been cases of clashes, what really is the extent of damage, and so on and so forth. So I think as the Parliament reconvenes in an hour, less than an hour's time from now, we can see clashes taking place actually between the opposition and the government on both the houses.
Okay, Pallavi, thank you for bringing us that context. Let's go over now to our colleague Abhishek Jha. He's with us. He tracks the Ministry of External Affairs. Abhishek, since December 9th, can you walk us through the communication that's taken place between China and India? We obviously know of the defense communication that's in fact been taking place over the last year and a half. But since December 9th, what have we seen?
So far, there has not been any official release regarding whether any diplomatic negotiation or diplomatic talk took place between India and China in the aftermath of the December 9th clash that we have witnessed along line of actual control in Arunachal Pradesh. But we do know that Indian side and Chinese side have been regularly engaged on the issue of border clashes. There have been 17 rounds of core commando talks along to sort out the border disputes, and there has also been diplomatic level engagements both in Delhi and Beijing, and also at the level of External Affairs Minister Wang Yi and from the Chinese side, and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar from the Indian side at various platforms where they have tried to negotiate how to maintain the status quo and how to take back the status of pre-Galwan level clash, that is April 22, 2020, when there was no transgression or no attempt to transgress from the Chinese side. But so far, in the wake of 9th December incident that we are talking currently, there has not been any official communication, if any diplomatic communication has been between the Delhi and Beijing.
Armed clashes took place between India and China. They were reported yesterday. They took place, however, on December 9th. Now, these clashes took place in Arunachal Pradesh's Tawang sector, where both sides were engaged in a face-off. The face-off led to minor injuries on both sides. According to sources, the chances of casualties were higher and do seem to be higher on the Chinese side. Several soldiers have been injured in the clash, with the Indian soldiers already being taken to the Guwahati hospital for treatment. Now, sources also say that the Chinese soldiers were present. Both had weapons with them, but it's not clear. It doesn't seem as if these weapons were rifles. Initial reports suggest that they were in fact spikes or canes with nails on them. Now, sources further say that the other side did have injuries, as we told you. They also say that we were initially short of numbers, but we did have a backup team that reached within minutes. Now, details are still sparse about the entire incident. Let's step away for a second and now focus on the political reaction. The Congress has lashed out since details were made available yesterday. The Congress has said that the centre is remaining silent and that they're not doing anything about continuing border tension. Both the Congress and the AIMIM have said that they will move an adjournment motion to discuss this matter. Remember, the winter parliament session is in session as we speak. This is the first major clash between the two sides since the Galwan Valley clash all the way back in June 2020, when you remember 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives. We have more breaking news here. We'll move to it very quickly. All right, more information coming in from government sources on the Tawang clash. This is what they're telling us. They're saying that in 2008, there was a Buddha statue in the Yangtze, which was broken by the PLA, that's the People Liberations Army, or the Chinese army. Since then, the area has been contested. Inputs suggest that the PLA tried to reclaim the area in the hope that the Indian army presence would be thin at this time of harsh snowbound winter. The peak is at 17,000 feet, the plateau at 14,000, which is where the clash began. Now, my colleague Arunima is with us right now. She's going to be bringing us more such details. Arunima, the chief detail that we're revealing to our audience is that the PLA possibly try to reclaim this area in the hope that the Indian Army presence would be thin at this time because there is a harsh winter in that entire area. Could you bring our audiences more context to that piece of information?
So what government functionaries are telling us is that this area at 14,000 feet, this is an area of pilgrimage for the locals. Yangtze had a Buddha statue which people worshipped. It also has what locally is called the place of 1,000 waterfalls. It's a touristy area for locals there because of the high terrain at 14,000 feet. It's also a place of pilgrimage. And in 2008, China tried to push back Indian Army from this point by breaking the Buddha statue and by restricting access. And since then, there have been repeated skirmishes where the People's Liberation Army has tried to dislodge Indian Army from that position. What functionaries tell me is that in the last 6 to 7 years, earlier Indian Army would only patrol this area, and in winter months during snowbound peaks, they would vacate. But in the last few years, they have continued to stay there even in the winter months. So I think Chinese army calculated that because it is snowbound right now, Indian army presence would be thin and they would take advantage of the situation and capture our post and push back the claim line. But since Indian army was continuing to hold on, it led to clashes. There were about 300. The PLA soldiers were about 300.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us now is somebody who drafted the border protocol between India and China. He's a decorated soldier and who has seen many conflicts, many wars, and he's also seen the interference of politics or lack of political will that has often compromised military ability. He is now currently the Chancellor of the Sikkim Central University. Namaste, Jai Hind, General Shekhardkar. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Can you hear me, sir? This is Anand.
Yes, Mr. Anand, Jai Hind, Namaskar. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. The intellectual depth which you display, I don't think it is comparable to anybody. So I'll try and answer your queries in my capacity, whatever I can. Yes, sir, kindly go ahead.
Sir, thank you for your kind words, but you're giving me far more credit than is due to me. But I would like to ask you, why is it that we do not learn about the nature of the Chinese and treat them thus? What they have done in Yangtze, is it not violative of the border protocol?
There's an old saying in the art of warfare, if you don't learn from your past, you will repeat it in future and it will destroy your future. You are absolutely right. Somehow, for whatever reason it may be, I don't want to cast any expression on anybody else. We are discussing about the India-China relations and the conflict which has taken place. We refuse to learn from our past. And that is the reason why our opponent, our enemy, our adversary keeps on hammering us again and again. You mentioned the tie I am putting on is of the 4 Corps which was raised during 1962 war. I served there a number of times. Yangtze, where the incident has taken place on 9th of night, I was there. During Kargil war, Chinese tried to do the same thing and we hammered them. You know the meaning of hammering in the armed forces parlor. We hammered them so badly, they never dared to come. For whatever reason it may be, they decided to come on 9th of this month. Reports say they came at 3 o'clock in the morning. Why 3 o'clock? Why not 2 o'clock? Why not 1 o'clock? It was connected to the moonlight which is prevalent there, and by the time they finish their job, it will be a daylight and they will be able to see the Chinese, Indian side. That was the reason for it. I will not go into the military details of the whole thing. The point is, we should anticipate this sort of thing. After Galwan, they have been put in their own place. However, I can see the reason why they are activating Arunachal Pradesh, particularly Yangtze. I mentioned to you in Kargil war they tried to do when I was the corps commander, and I had issued specific instruction to my troops, with all my respect to my seniors, that if they try and come just 10 feet into the territory, you shoot them. You shoot them. And we hammered them. Thereafter they never came. They never came there. Of late they have started coming again. I think, I don't mean to say that everybody should start shooting at each other. No, that is not the point. But the point is, the Chinese, both the political leadership and the PLA, they respect one thing, that is your firmness and your power. If they know you will punish them badly, they will never dare to come. They will never dare to come. Tawang, I have been there. I know what we have done. There is Lieutenant General Kulkarni, who comes on your TV channel sometime.
Yes.
He hammered them.
Yes.
He hammered them. He was the colonel that time.
I'm aware.
So what I am trying to say, that we got to learn from these people. If you don't learn from your past, your history will be at stake.
But why did we stop building infrastructure till about 2000, 2005? One, now are we still playing catch up? And thirdly, General Shekharkar, is this also building up to a larger escalation in the near future?
Why we did not build up enough infrastructure till 2005? The reasons were different. Once again, I would request you to kindly consider, and through your channel to the people, those who are the advisor on national security, do you know their past record? They were card holders of the Communist Party of India, with all my respect to them. And they are the one who are advising on national security. And the Chinese external aggression is also part of national security.
Correct.
Secondly, there was a reason for us not to build up. Mr. A.K. Anthony, when he was the defense minister, he did not allow any development to take place in the border areas, particularly along the China border. And today we are paying the cost for his stupidity, I will say. The word stupidity, with all my respect to him. These are the people, knowingly, unknowingly, intentionally, or because of their professional incompetency, I would say, they have put India into the scale. Now, they have improved a lot. From Tawang to Yangtze, where the incident has taken place, when I was there, it used to take 4 days walk. Or you go by helicopter, you can't even land there sometimes.
Correct.
Today, we can reach by road. And this is all has taken place in last 3 to 4 years' time. Every development is taking place. And that is the reason we can now put almost about 100 soldiers there round the clock and maintain them. If they were not there, if there were just 15 soldiers or 10 soldiers in that area, you could imagine what the Chinese would have done.
Correct.
And then would have started another escalation of war to evict them. And evicting a person from a height above you is the most difficult thing in mountain warfare.
Correct.
Chinese on both sides Yangtze, there are heights. They go up to 17,000 feet.
Yes.
Yangtze is several 14,000 feet. In mountain warfare, sir, if you are just 10 feet above your opponent, you have won the battle.
Correct.
That is the aim. I think our strategic planner now, which I am sure they must be doing it, to start taking care of these issues. You got to put on your people, your surveillance, your punishment equipment, your punishment material on those heights which can take on these people at least about 10 kilometers into their own territory. Unless we do it, just evicting them 20 feet, 40 feet, 100 feet, 1 kilometer doesn't make a difference. They can come again.
Correct.
They can come again. What we got to do is to put them so back that they have to think twice before they venture into the territory. I appeal to the powers that be in Delhi and dealing with these issues, start thinking on those lines. Please, for God's sake, don't put the future of your coming generation into the hand of Chinese.
Right.
They have decided now. There are 2 reasons probably why Chinese have picked up this timing. for this job.
Ji.
I don't think the PLA local commander would dare to do it on his own. I don't think so. I know Chinese well. I negotiated with them for 10 years, so I know the Chinese psychology. Probably the political leadership want to create a new situation whereby they can divert the attention of their own people onto these areas, number
Correct.
one. Number two, there are problems coming up in those areas,
Right.
and they want to put pressure on India. Yangtze is an important place in the Arunachal Pradesh entire area. There are 17 places in Arunachal Pradesh which are very, very dangerous for Chinese if we are on top. And they are favorable to us. And that is the reason why Chinese want to take over these areas. And we got to be careful about it.
My question, General Shekhar, is should we also now stop stepping back? Once we push them back, we should stay where we are rather than retreating to our post. We should redefine the post. Should we adopt that as a policy and quietly? The other thing is, does it work with the Chinese when we try and make a lot of song and dance about it and stare them in the face? Or does it work better when we quietly, swiftly hit them hard and then let them feel the pain?
Absolutely. The second point which you have mentioned, absolutely correct. Firstly, why should we vacate? Why should we leave our own territory? It belongs to us.
Yes.
And secondly, in the art of warfare, the philosophy of warfare, you must hit your enemy before he can group himself to attack on you. Once he has grouped himself, once he is close to you, 200 yards, 500 yards, 1 kilometer away, he has won half the battle. So you are right. I entirely agree with you. We should not start taking on Chinese into their own territory without creating a war-like situation. It is possible. It can be done. It cannot be discussed in open forum. But there are ways and possibilities on these issues. We must do it. Secondly, once we have taken a particular territory or area, there is no question of your vacating it.
Yeah.
We should have learnt our lesson from Galwan.
Yeah.
When we got on to Rizangla and Chinese were scared of us that time. They didn't know what will happen to them, and suddenly they started opening a diplomatic talk. Diplomats don't serve there. Diplomats speak with diplomacy.
Right.
But diplomacy has to be supported by military power, and therefore the voice of military power must be heard by those diplomats who are dealing with the Chinese. You can't say we have discussed this, therefore you do it. That is what is happening in India. Pardon my saying, I am being blunt about it. I don't cause any expression on anybody, but this has been happening. We have been bowing to them. Oh, Chinese are like this. Oh, that's what they are saying. Oh, that's what they feel. Let them feel what they feel. None of our concern. We should feel what is right for us, what is right for India,
Correct.
what is for right in the Indian Defence Forces, what is right for the coming generation of India. That should be our attitude in the life.
My question, the final question, and I have just about 90 seconds to go, General Shekhar. Should the people of the country know when a skirmish like this happens? Because incident happened on 9th, 2 days later flag meeting happens, but the report came out only on the 12th.
There is no harm in informing our people. After all, people will come to know. Somewhere or other, you can't hide such facts. Maybe the reason was, probably, I am not sure because I am not serving at the army headquarters, why this has happened, why the reports came out. Probably, we were quite sure that we have been able to send back the Chinese and they have not aggressed on. That could be the reason. And thereafter, but I don't think there is no harm if the Chinese came into our territory at the night of 9th of December, there was no harm. On 10th, we should say they came and we have repulsed them. We have sent them back. We have hammered them. There is nothing wrong in saying that. We should not feel shy. Never in the art of warfare, never feel shy of hammering your opponent, and don't ever feel shy to tell your people that you hammer them.
Correct. General Shekhar, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for always taking the right stand for Bharat. Thank you, sir.
God bless.
Well, with that, we call it a wrap. It's Brass Tacks with Zaka. Good evening, this is Brastak Zaka. Jacob, the clashes between Indian and Chinese troops happened after a stealth-by-night operation, an operation at 3 a.m. on the intervening night of 8th and 9th December. The PLA was trying to capture the icy heights of Yangtze at 17,000 feet east of Tawang. The Chinese troops were pushed back and pushed back hard all the way to their command post a good 20 kilometers away. The Raksha Mantri today in Parliament said this was a unilateral attempt to try and change the status quo. The opposition is upping the ante by asking for a full-fledged discussion in Parliament. The moot point is, was this part of a larger strategic Chinese design to try and unilaterally change the status quo? We've seen this in Galwan a couple of years ago. We're seeing this now in Tawang. And if indeed this is part of a larger strategic design, then how should India respond? But all of that and more coming up over the next 30 minutes. But first, the story of how this latest clash at Tawang, this latest friction point, also translated into fireworks in Parliament.
PLA ट्रुप्स ने तवांग सेक्टर के यांगसे एरिया में लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल पर अतिक्रमण कर स्टेटस को एक तरफा बदलने का प्रयास किया। चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है, अध्यक्ष महोदय।
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh informing Parliament that Indian soldiers thwarted attempts by Chinese troops to unilaterally change the status quo in Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang, last week and compelled them to return to their posts. During the confrontation, clashes broke out between the Indian and Chinese side. It happened in a place called Yangtze, about 30 kilometers northwest of Tawang. India has been building border infrastructure here, so have the Chinese. The clash happened on the night between 8th and 9th December. About 300 Chinese troops tried to capture icy heights around Yangtze. If either side manages to capture the heights at 17,000 feet, it would give them visibility up to 25 to 30 kilometers on either side. Hence, there's no need for patrolling in the harsh winter months. More than 2 years after the deadly Galwan clashes, Chinese troops turned to the same playbook. While no lethal weapons were used, PLA troops were armed with clubs, sticks and machetes. Around 6 soldiers were injured on the Indian side. The number of injuries on the Chinese side are believed to be far more.
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया, अध्यक्ष महोदय। हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
But while India stood firm amid Chinese aggression, the opposition saw opportunity to target the government.
And why I say that is that why are they hiding behind the bravery of our Indian soldiers? Where is their political leadership? Where is their bravery?
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
Home Minister Amit Shah countered Congress with this big attack.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया कि राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन को 2005-6 और 2006-7 के वित्तीय वर्षाल में चीनी दूतावास से 1,35,00,000 रुपए का अनुदान प्राप्त हुआ था।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगाओ, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हो? देश की सुरक्षा है।
As the war of words continues, are we headed for a full-blown conflict with China?
All right, let's bring in our full panel that's joining us tonight here on Brass Tag. Shehzad Poonawala is BJP National Spokesperson. Dr. Shama Mohammed, Spokesperson of the Congress Party. General Retired VP Malik is former Chief of Army Staff. Achal Malhotra, former diplomat. Dr. Shrikant Kundapalli is Professor of Chinese Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University and a China expert. And Alok Bansal is Director with the India Foundation. General Malik, I'll start with you first. What is your best understanding, sir, of what exactly happened in Tawang? Because all of these reports of, unsophisticated weapons, clubs and machetes, all of this, we've seen this in Galwan as well, and now we're seeing this in Tawang. Is this part of some kind of larger design, strategic design by the Chinese? And if so, what's the aim?
Good evening, Zaka. Good to be on your program. We have to see all these incidents holistically. This particular incident was a deliberately planned incident. There is no doubt, because before 9th December, they started collecting additional troops in this area. And this incident took place at 3 a.m. in the morning. So obviously it was planned. And it is a disputed area, no doubt about it. It has been so for a long time. But the manner in which they tried to intrude this time, that shows that certain amount of deliberate planning had been done. Now, when you look at all these incidents which have taken place, or not only over 2.5 years since Galwan took place, but even earlier, the Chinese are not interested in marking line of actual control on the map.
Okay.
One can keep questioning that. We have been asking them to do that. And unless you do that, you cannot avoid such incidents taking place when troops are eyeball to eyeball along the line of actual control. Similarly, one has to also see their other actions, the new villages which have come up along the line of actual control, which not only have civilians, but a larger number of ex-servicemen and intelligence people, etc. The kind of infrastructure which has come up all along the line of actual control so fast, and the kind of political statements that have been made by the Chinese political leadership. The law, border defense law has been passed recently. All these are indicating that there is no let up. These people will continue to put pressure on us.
Okay.
And also, when such incidents take place, then escalation also cannot be ruled out. And I'm sure they would know as much as we know about
All right.
these things.
I want to bring in our political spokespersons, Shehzad first and then Dr. Shama Mohammed. Shehzad, the question that the opposition is asking today, all parties, all opposition parties, I think Congress, TMC, Mr. Owaisi, all of them moving adjournment motions asking for a discussion. Two questions. One, this incident happened on the intervening night of 8th and 9th. Why is the country knowing about this on the 12th, and that too after media reports at a time when Parliament is in session? And two, the question that they're asking is, doesn't such an important issue deserve a full-fledged discussion in Parliament?
Answering your first question first, the incident took place on that date. After that, there was a flag meeting, and clearly you don't, and it was also a weekend, so Parliament was technically not in session, came to session on Monday. The flag meeting took place on 11th, and after that, the entire information was put out, not by the media report, but by a press release of the PRO of Defence in Tezpur. So the Congress party has actually lied. Supriya Shene lied when she said that this was revealed by sources. It wasn't true. And they've lied over and over again. And that's my fundamental problem. Why play Rajniti over an issue of Rashtaniti? When the surgical strike is announced by the DGMO, you ask for body bags. When the Balakot airstrike is announced by the forces, you say, what's the proof? Only Chil Kawas were killed. This kind of attacking the manobal of our forces, when we must all stand one and celebrate the valor of our forces, salute the valor of our forces. And let me tell you the fundamental difference that's taken place pre-2014 and post-2014. You remember there was once upon a time a defense minister who got up and said that the best strategy is not to bring any infrastructure along the LAC. You remember that statement made by A.K. Antony? Yeah. Well, let me tell you first, before even I come to RGF and the kind of donations they've taken or the MOUs they've signed, these are all irrelevant discussions in the sense that, everybody knows about the Congress. But let me tell you what we've done. And then let Shama Mohammed answer why wasn't this done so many years. 9 new tunnels have been built. 2.5 kilometers, the Sela tunnel has been built. 11 more tunnels are planned. The road projects which adds connectivity through Western Ladakh and Zanskar Valley, alternative connectivity has been done. The DSDBO road, which is basically advanced landing ground near the LAC, that has now been made, is being made into class 70 specification. We've created habitats for 22,000 troops, not just along the current sector that we're talking about, but even Arunachal and Sikkim, where there can be habitats for our troops there, storage facilities for 450 tanks and howitzers. We have also put our Rafales forward. We've got our troops now there. In fact, the Chinese were surprised by the intensity with which they were repelled, and not just now, even during
fair
Galwan.
enough. No one is discounting the fact that infrastructure. One second, I'll come to the RGF and Congress Party, CCP connections and all that. No, one second. So the thing is, yes, infrastructure has been built, no doubt about it.
And some would argue, and I want Shama Mohammed to respond,
just add
why
one
was infrastructure stopped through the period of the UPA? You had a defense minister, Shehzad is right, when Mr. Antony in Parliament said that the best thing to do is not to build any infrastructure there. What did the Congress do in a way that we can defend these disputed territories, which Shehzad has just outlined what Mr. Modi's government has done over the last 8 years?
Okay, now give me the same time as you've given Shehzad without interrupting, please, Zaka. You're a senior journalist. Now let's understand one thing. He keeps pointing fingers at the Congress party. During the Congress party's time, if there was any issue, we would call an all-party meeting and brief the opposition. We were in the government. Our question today is, why this hide and seek? Like he said, this is my country, and it's not the Bharatiya Janata Party defending. It is our army which is defending, and we all salute the army today. It is because of our army, how they defended and got the Chinese out, that we are still here, we are safe, all those things. But the issue today is that he talks about the Congress party. Let me ask him one thing. 20 soldiers were massacred in 2020. Isn't it? And what does our Prime Minister say? Na koi gusa hai, na koi military post liya hai. Means nobody has entered our territory and no one has taken any military post. That emboldened China, because that was what China was saying. Number two, after that, we in 2021 to 22 did business, trade with them with $115 billion. That is the highest, one of the highest in 5-year period of 43.3%. Why did, he keeps pointing fingers at us. Why did PM CARES take money from Xiaomi, 10 crores, 1 crore from Vivo and the other Chinese companies if after the Galwan incident? He has to explain that to us. You take money, you do trade with China. We are at a trade deficit and they are at a trade surplus. You must show that we will not do trade with them. We will not do these sort of things. Okay. And the other thing, we have them inside Depsang. We all know that the maximum number of square kilometers is gone in Depsang, 900 square kilometers. But they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell us anything about it. And the other thing is, we were patrolling in Pangong so up to 8, finger point 8. Now we are at 3. So why? And why did we ever give up the most crucial Kailash range that could have been used for leveraging?
Okay, you've asked a whole bunch of questions. Let me get Shehzad to respond, and then I'll go back to the academics after that. Yeah, Shehzad, the fundamental question is, when the attack happened last time, PM said, "Na koi gusa, na koi kisi ko ghusne denge." What happened in Tawang? Did they gusao? Did we gusao into their territory? What exactly happened?
Okay. First of all, look at the lies that the Congress peddles. She just said that the Chinese are at finger 3. Here's a statement of the Northern Army Chief. Indian Express has quoted him. Please read. They've been pushed beyond finger 8. But yet she says that finger 3, they are on finger 3. Is it a fact? You know it's not a fact. Now let me tell you the other lies that they say. I'm glad that they're talking about our army today. These are the same people who said Sadak ka gunda for the army. When the surgical strike was announced by the DGMO, not by a political figure, they said it's Khoon ki dalali and surgical strike. Forget that. They say, why don't we have an all-party meeting? Madam, all-party meeting is all fine, but please tell me which political party has a standing MOU with the Chinese leadership, won't disclose it, takes money into their RGF fund from the Chinese government and the Chinese embassy, and after that you talked about trade deficit. It was $1 billion in 2004-05. It left at $36 billion. That's a percentage increase of 2000% when you left in 2013-14. Today it's $55 billion. That's a 42% rise. Those who increased the trade deficit by 2000%.
No, one second. I don't think the trade deficit or the trade surplus is an answer to what happened in Tawang or what happened in Galwan.
Just give me 30 more seconds.
Okay,
just 30 more seconds. Now let me tell you the holistic approach that we've taken. An economic cost has been imposed on China. Please, madam, please don't interrupt me. Madam, please don't interrupt me. I'm answering everything. Acha, I'll answer about the PM cares. You'll have to pipe down. Let me answer about PM cares.
Okay, he's answering. He's answering.
She spoke about Vivo and Xiaomi. She doesn't know that there's been a massive crackdown on Redmi, Xiaomi and Vivo and Oppo by the ED. So if you've taken money from them, why are we cracking down on them? This is the half-read knowledge of the Congress spokesperson.
Zaka, okay.
Please let me complete.
All right. Okay. One second. We have 40 minutes. Let me go to the academics
30
also,
seconds
please.
more. It will break the flow.
Okay.
30 seconds more. I beseech you. Now let me tell you the approach that we've taken. One, we imposed a strategic cost. We've told you about the kind of infrastructure we're building. to a military cost. This is not a government that sits back. It doesn't say that, oh, 2611 happened, we will give them MFN status. We do surgical strike, we do Balakota strike. 3, we've done an economic cost. They're out of 5G, they're out of highway construction, apps were banned, we pushed them out of the phone market, we are banning them from wherever we can.
Okay.
There's a diplomatic cost.
Okay, one second. I need to, there are 3 other guests. One second. There are 3 other guests. Please, I'll come back to you. Let me go to the 3 other guests. Let me ask Dr. Kondapalli. Let me ask,
they could have bought back the 38,000 square kilometers they took.
Let me ask Dr. Kondapalli, as a China watcher, we've been seeing this pattern, not just Galwan and Tawang that's happened just now, but is there a fear that this has become the new normal? This is now the modus operandi by the Chinese troops, where they're not using guns or armaments or sophisticated weapons. They're using, almost primitive clubs and sticks and spikes to physically injure troops and then violently press their claims. And if so, how may India respond, and how should India respond? Because there's also the larger question of, we've had 20 rounds of border talks. It doesn't seem like getting to any kind of conclusion anytime soon.
Well, the Chinese have also mobilized very sophisticated equipment like the T-15 tanks, lightweight tanks. They have also mobilized J-20 aircraft, Y-20 transports, and Z-20 helicopters. In addition, they also have the 5G networks and fiber optics. And of course, the Chinese patrols can come to the LAC in about a few hours, while the Indian soldiers require nearly 2 to 3 weeks to reach the line of actual control. So they have also all those sophisticated equipment, which means that India needs to now prepare for conventional deterrence in a larger measure, which I think we have already begun. If you have seen the Prime Minister's visit to Arunachal Pradesh, where we have now a new airport, plus the east to west highway project that is under construction with nearly 40,000 crore project. And of course, we also have the deployments from the Army and the Air Force and others. So the new normal is not exactly the barbed wire fencing. These are gray zone tactics to avoid the 93, 96, 2005, 2030 CBM's agreements. However, we have decided in Galwan and aftermath that we will use firepower, if necessary, to defend ourselves. So there is a political decision taken in that regard.
Okay.
And which means that we may even change the ground dynamics if the Chinese keep escalating in this manner.
Okay.
So that is quite...
Let me ask Colonel Alok Bansal, what Professor Kondapalli said, and I think he's right. What Galwan has done is change the nature of warfare, or change the nature of contact, as it were, between India and China at these friction points. What he talked about, conventional deterrence. After Galwan, India is now deploying anywhere between 8 to 10 brigades worth of men in eastern Ladakh. After what happened in Tawang, do you suspect that we'll have to do something similar, between 5 to 10 brigades of men? Essentially, this is the LOCization of the line of actual control. All right, can I ask Achal Malhotra that? We've lost Colonel Bansal's line. Yes, Mr. Malhotra.
Yes. If I understand your question, you are asking as to what should we be doing?
Yeah.
And should we convert the line of actual control into line of control? Well, Raka, the main issue is in all the debates which start after an incident like this happens, the core issue as to why China is doing this, there is no plausible explanation. I have not come across any plausible explanation for what happened in Doklam, later in Galwan, and now here. So why? But one thing is clear: what is clear is that China has absolutely no intention to resolve the border dispute. They are not interested in demarcation or delineation of the borders at all. There has been absolutely no progress on that, and probably that was the reason that when it was not happening and there was a desire to engage China, we had put all these issues on the back burner, and we had devised certain confidence building measures through those agreements of 93, 96, 2005, etc., etc. But they are not working. So we don't have a clear-cut answer as to what we should be doing to face this challenge from China, except that in recent years we have intensified our efforts to match the kind of infrastructure they are building on their side, and we are trying to ensure that we are not taken in by any surprise at any point of time. I think under the present circumstances, this is the only plausible course of action, that we strengthen our defense preparedness, and at any point of time we should be able to handle or tackle the situation that arises. Because I'm saying that because the pressure on China, the international pressure on China, about which people were talking about a couple of years ago, is not the kind of pressure we thought it will be. Even Joe Biden has declared openly that there are many areas where they will have to engage China. And we ourselves also, although we have said, defined a bottom line that no talks unless there is peace and tranquility at the border, but in many other areas like trade and etc., it's a business as usual.
Okay.
In fact, trade is increasing.
So let me ask Colonel Alok Bansal, the point that both Mr. Malhotra as well as earlier before him, Dr. Kondapalli were making is that after Galwan, India is now having to commit anywhere between 8 to 10 brigades worth of men around eastern Ladakh. After this Tawang incident, should we prepare for a more conventional deterrence vis-a-vis China, almost like what happens on the LOC? Do we have to do that on the LAC? And more importantly, if infrastructure building on the Indian side is the reason why China is doing this from time to time, then all the more reason to put more troops to defend that new infrastructure. You have to unmute yourself, Captain Bansal.
There is no doubt that there is some amount of tension as far as this border is concerned, and I think Chinese are concerned with the pace of infrastructural development. Because after 62, for decades, there was a growing perception that we should not build any infrastructure because that would prove to be a defense, because the infrastructure will allow Chinese to come down. But in last few years, we have phenomenally built infrastructure, and especially in Arunachal, the Trans-Arunachal road which is coming up, which is coming along the international boundary and which is going from east to west, will allow Indian Army to shift forces from one valley to another. Now, you had a question whether should we go for conventional deployment like LOC. To my mind, no, that would be infructuous. Why do we need to do that? If we have built infrastructure, we can move troops from one portion to another easily. And Chinese troop presence still is not as much as the Pakistan has along LOC. So we don't have that sort of an intensive, because Chinese generally remain in the background. They come once in a while, create this sort of incident, and then again go back. They withdraw. So we should be in a position to tackle this. Deploying our troops unnecessarily all along the LAC in larger numbers, to my mind, would be extremely.
So why then are the Chinese doing this? If it is patrolling tactics, we've seen patrols, for years now. The Chinese come into what we perceive as our territory. We go into what they perceive as their territory. Why have these sort of unsophisticated attacks increased in the last couple of years?
See, I think what I perceive is, in this particular case, I think Chinese are testing waters. They are seeing our resolve, how resolute we are as far as the sanctity of LAC is concerned. And although this fact has come to light, but to best of my knowledge, for last about 10-15 days, there has been some tension on the eastern border all along. In fact, Indian troops had moved to forward deployment. There were also reports that certain leaves, etc., had been cancelled. So there has been some tension even before this incident has happened. and I think Indian troops were prepared, and that's why we saw an immediate befitting response was given to the Chinese, and they were forced to withdraw.
As a larger
So
question, if I can ask General Malik, there is a power differential between India and China. I guess some of this, incidents that we're seeing in Tawang or earlier before that in Galwan is China trying to convey the message that they are the bigger power in this part of the world. Clearly, that is not acceptable to India, and India has to defend its territory. But in the interim, when this power differential is there, General Malik, what is it that India can do to A, build its defense capabilities, and B, more importantly, because this is where the catch-22 happens. The more India goes into a US embrace with things like Quad, the more the Chinese use that as justification for incidents like Tawang and Galwan.
Zaka, we may not be having adequate deterrence at the moment, but definitely we have acquired a certain amount of dissuasion capability all along. And I do not agree with people. I believe that already it has become, situation along the LAC has become like the LOC. And to say that our troops are not there at the moment, we have strengthened our troops both in the western sector as well as on the eastern sector. And of course, there are certain build-up that is taking place in terms of infrastructure and certain other capabilities we are building, and we are trying it as fast as possible. This has to continue. And as I said, ईंट का जवाब पत्थर से देना पड़ेगा along the line of control. And if they want to escalate it, we should also be prepared to escalate it, because they have been testing this ground for how many years now? So we have to build these capabilities, and it might take some more time to build deterrence part, but dissuasion part, I think we've already done quite a bit, and we can do some more to build it further.
All right.
And the other aspect is that we have to now work out a complete strategy which involves not only the military, but also the diplomacy, the trade, and the political aspect. We have to give them answers politically when required, and not just sort of keep quiet about it. Similarly, trade, we have not taken effective measures till now. That is also part of our strategy toward China.
Sure.
China's attitude towards India, I do not foresee changing for the next 25, 30 years.
Okay,
And
so I'll ask that to the political spokesperson.
To say that I will not have relations with the
Yeah,
USA.
no,
We will have relations with whoever we feel it is in our national interest. So we cannot bow down to their.
Yeah, I'm coming to you, Shama. Shehzad, responding to the Chinese on the border can't just be restricted to military action. Please answer the question that Shama asked. Why are we now doing record trade with the Chinese? 115 or 120 billion was the trade in 21-22. More importantly, you banned apps. They've found a circumvented way of coming through apps. You are saying ED is cracking down against Chinese phone makers. They are very much available in stores or in online places. Point is, where is the holistic approach of acting against China? Just banning firecrackers for Diwali is not going to cut it.
I don't think you should categorize the response of the Indian military might.
No, not the military. I'm saying the non-military response.
Zaka, you're far too experienced to make that kind of comment. And
no, not military might. That's why I'm clarifying. Non-military response.
Whether it's military or whether it's the overall, Shama Mohammed, you're a government that parceled off all our economic and territorial interests. Can you please pipe down for a moment while I answer? Thanks. It's not eat ka jawab patthar se, it's eat ka jawab lohe se. And let me just list out a few things that we've done. First of all, the only way to deal with a bully is to stand up to the bully. I'm not taking names, but I think the phrase is quite relevant here. The point is that when Galwan happened, we went ahead and we constructed that bridge on Galwan. Is it not a fact? We've not backed down. We are doing whatever it is. In fact, the person who's put out the story in the Tribune, you must go and see his Twitter timeline. I don't want to emphasize, we are sitting at 17,000 feet, overseeing both sides of the LAC. When they came, they got what they deserved. And we have other infrastructure there, which I don't want to, as a spokesperson of the ruling party, elaborate upon, but it's there on the person's Twitter timeline who's put out the story. We can go and see it. We've not restricted our action to banning a few apps. We've banned and we've taken action on the economic front. Holistic actions have been taken to the extent that they're out of 5G, they're out of many other strategic and economic sectors, which is affecting them. But more importantly, we are also building a capacity when it comes to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Then coming to the military might, we've put our best infrastructure there. We are building infrastructure, we are building roadways, connectivity, but we are also putting our military infrastructure there, from the Rafales to the S-400 systems. Everything else is being put there.
No, you made that point earlier.
Let me come to another point.
One second. Shama, I have a specific question. And the question is, when Shehzad says Chinese companies can't bid for 5G in India, we've seen that. Chinese companies are out of major infrastructure projects, railways, etc. We've seen that as well. A trade deficit is not going to come down overnight. We have a record trade deficit with the United States as well.
Just give me 30 more seconds.
That's not good. Let us speak. Please, Shehzad, please.
This is not that. Let me speak.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. Yeah.
No, the thing is, he was saying now trade is not, we have banned these apps. The trade, I mean, we have a record trade with America, but look at this. When our soldiers have died, our imports have gone up. We should reduce it. Isn't it the time of Atmanirbhar Bharat? $75 billion is the imports. Can you go and check that? That is one. Number two, we keep saying that we are lying, we are lying. Who is Tapir Gao, Bharatiya Janata Party MP? In 2019, he said in Parliament, history will not be nice to me if I don't tell the truth. They have entered Arunachal. I don't know why my party is not talking about it, why the media is not covering about it. Okay. Now, you had asked one question, why the Chinese are doing it right now much more than before. The Chinese are doing it, but the Prime Minister of India said, nobody has entered our territory and no military post is taken. So they have got emboldened because the Prime Minister
But
is
Shama,
saying
there
exactly
were incursions happening even when UPA was in power. Depsang, Demchok, 2013, 2014. There were incursions even when Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister.
There were incursions, but we never lied about it. We never said there were no incursions. We fought back. We said the truth. Now, what is happening is the Prime Minister is on the side of the Chinese when our soldiers have died. Now, he keeps saying that, you know, the Congress party has this relationship with the Chinese. Who is the Chief Minister of India, or the only person who have gone 18 times to China? Narendra Damodar Das Modi. Who? Mr. Nitin Gadkari. Why did he go in 2011 to China? I can tell you a number of people with the Bharatiya Janata Party have gone to China. And number three, very important.
No, but would you like to clarify? One second. Dr. Shama Mohammed, after which I'll come to Shehzad. No, one second. Do you like to clarify why the RGF Foundation was getting 1.35 crore rupees from the Chinese embassy? Would you want to clarify on the BJP saying why was Rahul Gandhi wining and dining with the Chinese ambassador when Galwan was happening? What is this? Sorry, when Doklam was happening. What is this 2008 MOU between the Congress Party and the Communist Party of China? Will you explain that?
Now I'm going to tell you that. I want to ask, he says wining and dining. What nonsense is that? Where was he wining and dining? Never was there any wining and dining. Now, when you are part of the government, the Chinese were not invading. We had no incursions at that point of time. There will be some talks. But then I want to ask, why is Ajit Doval's son doing business with the Pakistanis? Everybody knows that. So can he answer that? We also heard the India Foundation has got from the Chinese money. So why are they getting money? We want to see what is the violation.
Okay.
They keep saying the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation has done some violations. That's what Amit Shah comes out on television and says. Show me the violation, and I want to ask him today.
Okay.
Who was the one who invited the ISI to investigate?
One second. That's a separate matter.
Tell me the
Shehzad, what is the one second, Shama, one second. Calm down, please. What is the FCRA violation of these guys getting 1.35 crores? And frankly, it happened in 2008 or 9. What is that got to do with what happened in Tawang last week?
Well, first of all, now let me answer this, but let me come to the larger points. First of all, the FCRA laws and regulations are very clear that as a political party and its outfit, you can't take donations, and especially from foreign entities. And if you don't take the prerequisite
But RGF is not a political party, it's a foundation.
No, but it was taken for pretty much a political purpose. They can contest it in court if it is an illegal cancellation, first of all. Secondly, what work is Rajiv Gandhi Foundation doing? Please explain why did you take the Chinese embassy money and the Chinese government money, and what research did you do? You could put it out in the public domain. Secondly, she is wrong when she says that they were not in government when the Doklam issue happened, and at that time Rahul Gandhi was with the Chinese ambassador. Here is a picture of the entire family under the Chinese tent. What were you trying to do? And Doklam, this is not the first time that the Chinese were building infrastructure in that area. But how many times was it contested between 2004 to 14? 600 incursions took place between 2010 to 13 as per Shyam Saran. 640 square kilometers was occupied. Dem Chowk, Doomchili, Tiapang, Chapji Ghati before 2014. What action did they take? The only action they took was taking in the Chinese money into their RGF accounts. What action did they take? AK Antony stands up in parliament. Now please madam, please don't interrupt.
No, I've given you more than ample time, Shama. Shama,
what
come
is this?
on.
This is not the...
No, last thing you should say on this debate is you are not given any time.
This is not fair.
I can ask the other neutral guests how much time they got compared to how much the political spokespersons got. Anyway.
Obstruct the flow. Let me complete
this is
Zaka
not done. He's just going on and on, and I'm not given my time to speak.
You are given more than your share of time, Shama.
Why did they abstain? Ask him. In the United Nations,
this is not
okay.
fair.
One second. This is not going anywhere. If both of you.
But I was not the offender here.
Okay.
She was the intruder.
Okay.
Now let me complete my point. Zaka, please let me complete my point. Why are you subjecting me to this?
Finish your point. 30 seconds. I need to go back to the experts again. Yeah.
I am saying that AK Antony got up in parliament and made a statement that no infrastructure is the best policy. Can Shama Mohammed, with all her seriousness, defend that kind of approach towards national security?
Okay. Shama, I'll give you 30 seconds. You respond to his charge, and then I have to go back to the experts.
Who signed those border agreements which do not allow the use of firearms?
Let her respond.
It was 93, 96.
Let her respond. Shehzad, yield please. Yeah. Shama.
So he says now that they are doing a lot of infrastructure development. The Chinese have doubled the infrastructure development. I want to know why the Prime Minister of this country lies to his people, saying that nobody has entered the Chinese territory.
Shama, this is the third time you're saying that in the last 30 minutes.
So
at least agree that I've given you time to make that point 3 times in the last 30 minutes.
You're not allowing me to continue. No, September this year, the 16th Commander Corps meeting between China and India has taken place. Why are these meetings taking place? For disengagement of hot springs. So why are these meetings taking place if nobody has entered? Number one, I want to ask. He has not answered about Tapir Gao, their own member of parliament, who says that they have entered Arunachal very deep.
All right. I'm going back to the experts. I'm going back to the experts. I want to go back to Professor Kondapalli. 1 second. One second, Shama. I'm pulling back. I want to go back to Professor Kondapalli. Please, let's have him on the Professor Kondapalli, again, I come back to the larger strategic response. Obviously, India can't stop building infrastructure in the border areas. That pace will continue. And in that interim, as China tests these waters, as one of the guests said, does India have any other option? Because right now, diplomatically too, and I keep going back to this, the foreign minister said in Parliament last week, you cannot have a normal relationship, a normal bilateral relationship until this border question is settled. The Chinese approach seems to be, let's put the border on the back burner for now. Let's focus on other areas like trade and people to people and so on and so forth. And let's try and have a semblance of a normal relationship. Clearly, there is a difference in which both countries want to approach. And I don't believe you can have a normal bilateral relationship till the boundary question is, at least the friction points, Depsang, Demchok, etc., the others, are resolved. All right, Dr. Kondapalli, can you keep your phone next to you? We're not able to hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. I was mentioning that that was the situation. But in 1980s, we began considering the border issue from purely management perspective. How to manage the border dispute. We have gone beyond that, and Jayashankar mentioned repeatedly that unless until peace and tranquility on the border, progress.
All right, we'll try and fix that audio. I think there's a problem in Dr. Kondapalli's audio. But let me get Achal Malhotra and Alok Bansal in on that. Border management, does that seem to be, Captain Bansal, the only way forward till the differential in power balance is more equalized? In on that. Border management, does that seem to be, Captain Bansal, the only way forward?
And at least on the map we can promulgate, because as of now we have also not done it, and then put the pressure on Chinese to actually do so. Because till the time line of actual control is actually accepted and delineated on map and demarcated on ground, this sort of issues will continue. So I think we have been asking China to do so. China has been reluctant. One way of putting pressure could be to unilaterally delineate on map and promulgate it. That will put pressure. We are already there in strength. We are building up the infrastructure, and it doesn't make sense to get into a bigger confrontation when you are still in the building up stage. More significantly, neither China nor India is interested in a confrontation at this stage.
Sure.
We have adequate deterrence and we are deterring them adequately. And I think this we have shown both in Galwan as well as in Tawang. And I think Chinese understand. I think this issue, they are beginning to understand. It's beginning to bite them. And I think diplomatically, what we need to do is, I think we could probably promulgate the line of actual control unilaterally. That would put some pressure on China. I think
Achal
they would
Malhotra,
be forced to, I think, come up with their version of line of actual control. And then
if India were to, let's say
simpler.
in Parliament, demarcate officially the line of actual control, as it were, will that then force the Chinese hand, as it were? Also, I keep going back to this. India is not the only country that China has a border dispute with. Why not India reach out to countries like Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, a whole bunch of countries that have border disputes with China, far graver ones, where they've been reclaiming islands, they've been building airstrips there, so on and so forth. If Achal Malhotra can hear me, then let him take that question. If not, can you hear me, Mr. Malhotra? All right, then let's get to General Malik on that, and I'll close after that. Yeah, General Malik.
Yeah, I think we have to adopt a holistic approach. And by now, it should be quite clear to everyone, politically, militarily, that China is continuing to play the game that they have been doing for such a long time. And now it has become even more intense than it was, say, a decade ago. And all the measures, both economically, politically, and diplomatically, we have to expand our influence wherever possible and be firm against any of these activities that the Chinese undertake along the border, militarily as well as diplomatically.
All right. I think it was Deng Xiaoping, ironically, who said, hide your claws and bide your time. As India builds up more and more infrastructure, right now, the infrastructure on the Chinese side is more because they had a head start. They've been doing this for a number of years. As long as that differential remains, and the attempt by India would be to decrease that differential, bring it on par, till such time India will have to do border management. India will have to manage these skirmishes that happen from time to time. And most importantly, like I said, India will need to find a way to holistically answer the China question, whether it's in the economic realm, the diplomatic realm, and of course, undoubtedly, the military realm, where our army and our Jawans are more than capable of matching the Chinese and meeting the Chinese challenge. We'll take a quick break. I want to thank all our guests, but on the other side, I want to bring you up to speed with the finer details of what exactly happened in Yangtze. This is the place of the attack that happened on the intervening night of 8th and 9th of December. Yangtze is barely 30 kilometers from Tawang. This was a hotly contested area in the past as well. What was the immediate provocation for this attack that happened last week? How did the Indian troops respond and respond in kind? And most importantly, what is likely to happen now in this eastern sector? Because Tawang, mind you, was hotly contested in '62 as well, and it is an important seat of Tibetan Buddhism. So all of that in an explainer format right on the other side. All right, as we take that break, that was the news until now. Right now, let's listen into some big news that we have for car owners.
Major clash between the two sides since the Galwan Valley clash all the way back in June 2020, when you remember 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives. We have more breaking news here. We'll move to it very quickly. All right, more information coming in from government sources on the Tawang clash. This is what they're telling us. They're saying that in 2008, there was a Buddha statue in the Yangtze which was broken by the PLA, that's the People Liberations Army, or the Chinese army. Since then, the area has been contested. Inputs suggest that the PLA tried to reclaim the area in the hope that the Indian Army presence would be thin at this time of harsh snowbound winter. The peak is at 17,000 feet, the plateau at 14,000, which is where the clash began. Now, my colleague Arunima is with us right now. She's going to be bringing us more such details. Arunima, the chief detail that we're revealing to our audience is that the PLA possibly tried to reclaim this area in the hope that the Indian Army presence would be thin at this time because there is a harsh winter in that entire area. Could you bring our audiences more context to that piece of information?
So what government functionaries are telling us is that this area at 14,000 feet, this is an area of pilgrimage for the locals. Yangtze had a Buddha statue which people worshipped. It also has what locally is called the place of 1,000 waterfalls. It's a touristy area for locals there because of the high terrain at 14,000 feet. It's also a place of pilgrimage. And in 2008, China tried to push back Indian Army from this point by breaking the Buddha statue and by restricting access. And since then, there have been repeated skirmishes where the People's Liberation Army has tried to dislodge Indian Army from that position. What functionaries tell me is that in the last 6 to 7 years, earlier Indian Army would only patrol this area, and in winter months during snowbound peaks, they would vacate. But in the last few years, they have continued to stay there even in the winter months. So I think Chinese army calculated that because it is snowbound right now, Indian army presence would be thin and they would take advantage of the situation and capture our post and push back the claim line. But since Indian army was continuing to hold on, it led to clashes. There were about 300. The PLA soldiers were about 300. The Indian army refused to vacate the post, and that's why they got injured. About 9 of them with limb injuries, fractures, etc. were evacuated to a Guwahati hospital. The situation currently, as per government functionaries, is under control. Flag meeting has happened. Both sides have gone back to their position. Status quo has been restored. But it just shows that, repeated attempts are being made by China to reclaim parts of line of actual control, which they think is their territory.
Pallavi has been bringing details to us about possible moves pursued in the parliament by opposition parties like the Congress and a few minutes ago the AIMIM. Pallavi, over to you.
Well, as the government sources are pointing out, that it's not the first time these kind of clashes have taken place and India has retaliated quite strongly. That's exactly the point which the Congress party and other opposition parties have been making, that there have been instances of these kind of clashes or attempts by Chinese to enter into Indian territory. But the government has always denied it, or government has said it's not really happened. And therefore, this is the reason why there needs to be a debate and discussion. There have been multiple notices which have been served in both the houses of parliament and cutting across party lines. The Trinamool Congress, Owaisi, Congress party, all of them are in the mood to get out the government. One, they want a short duration discussion on this. Second, they want it to be concluded by a statement from the defense minister. And third, the prime minister must be present inside the house. In fact, the main target of attack is the prime minister because they accuse him of hiding the facts, not admitting that these have been cases of clashes, what really is the extent of damage, and so on and so forth. So I think as the parliament reconvenes in an hour, less than an hour's time from now, we can see clashes taking place actually between the opposition and the government on both the houses.
Okay, Pallavi, thank you for bringing us that context. Let's go over now to our colleague Abhishek Jha. He's with us. He tracks the Ministry of External Affairs. Abhishek, since December 9th, can you walk us through the communication that's taken place between China and India? We obviously know of the defense communication that's in fact been taking place over the last year and a half. But since December 9th, what have we seen?
So far, there has not been any official release regarding whether any diplomatic negotiation or diplomatic talk took place between India and China in the aftermath of the December 9th clash that we have witnessed along line of actual control in Arunachal Pradesh. But we do know that Indian side and Chinese side have been regularly engaged on the issue of border clashes. There have been 17 rounds of core commando talks along to sort out the border disputes, and there has also been diplomatic level engagements both in Delhi and Beijing, and also at the level of External Affairs Minister Wang Yi and from the Chinese side and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar from the Indian side at various platforms where they have tried to negotiate how to maintain the status quo and how to take back the status of pre-Galwan level clash, that is April 22, 2020, when there was no transgression or no attempt to transgress from the Chinese side. But so far, in the wake of 9th December incident that we are talking currently, there has not been any official communication, if any diplomatic communication has been between the Delhi and Beijing.
Armed clashes took place between
So this latest clash that happened between Indian and Chinese troops comes 2 years after what we saw in Galwan. It's important to understand where this happened. It's happened in a place called year.The, and let's try and sort of locate year.The on a map in the eastern sector for you. It's very close to Tawang. It's about 25-30 kilometers northeast of Tawang. Remember, Tawang is the last big command headquarters that we have as far as the eastern side is concerned, the eastern sector is concerned. Remember, both India and China have been building infrastructure, particularly the Chinese side, heavy-duty infrastructure leading all the way up to some villages on the other side of year.The. India too has been building a new road in a place called Bamla, east of Bamla, and before this clash point that happened in year.The. So there has been massive infrastructure build-up by both sides on either side of this clash site called year.The. Now, the important thing to understand is that this clash, this happened on the intervening night between 8th and 9th of December. This was last week. It happened at 3 a.m. and we're given to understand that about 300 Chinese PLA soldiers, that's not a small number, 300 Chinese PLA soldiers in the dead of the night at 3 in the morning tried to capture the icy heights. Remember, these heights are 15,000 feet, 17,000 feet. The attempt was to try and capture the heights and get area domination around the year.The. Now, why this is important is if either side manages to capture these heights, like I said, the plateaus here are 10,000, 12,000 feet, and the peaks, the heights, are at anywhere between 15 to 17,000 feet. If either side manages to capture this, and remember, this is disputed site, all along the 3,500 kilometer line of actual control that runs all the way from Ladakh in the western sector all the way up to Tawang in the eastern sector, there are about 20 to 25 recognized disputed spots. year.The happens to be one of them. If either side captures year.The, then what it means is it gives you visibility, the area domination, the height advantage. It gives you visibility for about 25 to 30 kilometers on either side, on the Indian side as well as on the Chinese side. What this means is then in these harsh climatic conditions where snow sometimes can reach about 7-10 inches, in these harsh climatic conditions, there is no need for daily patrolling on the ground because you get clear visibility on either side. You can, from year.The, from the heights of year.The, you can see all the way up to Tawang. So it is important that that height domination and area domination be established. So what the Chinese soldiers were trying to do on that intervening night between 8th and 9th of December was to capture the heights of year.The. Now, this is not the first time that this place, year.The, has been a site of dispute between Indian and Chinese troops. This same place, the Chinese troops had tried something similar at a much smaller scale, though, in October of 2021, that was last year. Similarly, they had done so in 2016 as well. Now, that time too was around that October-November period. Why they are doing this now at this point of time is once the snow sets in, the terrain is very difficult, the weather is inclement, you cannot move around these areas very easily. It's very difficult to move large number of troops. Therefore, they were looking for that height advantage. And like I said, year.The is already one of the recognized disputed sites along the 3,500 kilometer line of actual control. Now, the modus operandi, and this is where it gets interesting. The question that Indian authorities are asking themselves is, was this similar to the modus operandi that we saw in Galwan, and is that now a new normal with the Chinese, or is there something less localized as far as this is concerned? The similar modus operandi, there were no lethal weapons, no guns, no armaments of any nature that were used. It was clubs, machetes, sticks. There were 6 Indian soldiers who were grievously injured. They had to be flown out from year.The to the field hospital in Guwahati. We're given to understand from top army sources that there is a higher number of PLA soldiers too who have been injured. Remember, there were about 300 who came. The Indian side immediately called for reinforcements. There were close to 100, 150 Indian soldiers who came within a few minutes of that call, and then they chased the Chinese all the way back to their command post, which is on the other side of this disputed site. So the injuries also mark the kind of weapons that were used, the bruises that we saw, the black eyes, the fractures. So like I said, 6 Indian soldiers are getting treatment at the field hospital in Guwahati. Now, what is important to understand is China has been building, on its side of the Yangtze, it has been building what are called these settler villages. What it essentially does is it takes a large number of these veterans or people who have served in the paramilitary forces in China and settles them in these so-called settler villages. On the other side of Yangtze is a village called Xiaokang, which is being used as a launch pad. That's the fear. There are about 600 such settler villages all the way from eastern Ladakh in the western sector, in the middle sector, in Himachal and in Uttarakhand, and of course eventually in Tawang in the eastern sector. These 600 villages, and this is what Indian Army veterans and people in the forces also believe, that these villages, these settler villages like Xiaokang on the opposite side of Yangtze are being used in a way by the Chinese PLA troops to try and use them as launch pads for these kind of stealth operations. Remember, salami slicing has been happening in all 3 sectors. It is a playbook that the Chinese have sort of perfected, particularly in the disputes that we're seeing in the South and East China Seas. Now, Tawang is important not just for military reasons, but also for political reasons. It's one of the most sacred places in Tibetan Buddhism. In fact, the Tibetans believe that the 6th Dalai Lama actually was born in Tawang. The monastery there in Tawang is one of the holiest shrines for Tibetan Buddhists. There is also a belief amongst the Tibetan Buddhists that the successor to the current Dalai Lama, remember, he's of advanced age, the successor to the current Dalai Lama could potentially hail from Tawang. It's a secretive process, it's a meditative process. They go on for a number of days until, of course, they get a sign as to who the Dalai Lama has reincarnated in and as. So potentially, the successor to the current Dalai Lama could come from Tawang. So for political reasons as well, Tawang is absolutely essential, both for India as well as for China. Now, if you go back and check in history, even in 1962, much of the war was actually focused in this belt, in the eastern sector, as it were. The Chinese, in fact, came all the way from their side, from across the Yangtze River. They came down these icy peaks, capturing Bomla, Zumla, and then finally all the way down south to Tawang. They had captured Tawang, they had held area control of Tawang, but eventually, within 10 days, they relinquished it and they went back onto the other side of Yangtze, this disputed site, as it were. So the important thing is that for the Chinese, and remember, particularly in the last 10, 15 years or so, from 2008-9 onwards, every time a senior government official from India would visit Tawang, the Chinese would make a huge hue and cry about it. They refer to Tawang as part of southern Tibet. And like I said, for not just military reasons, but for political reasons as well, the Chinese have never really given up their claim on Tawang. The important question is this. The incident that happened at Yangtze, the trigger factor of these launch pads, because it's not just here at Yangtze where these launch pads are there, it's there all across the line of actual control. And second, the modus operandi. Remember, the 93 and 96 agreements bar Indian and Chinese troops from opening fire. The last big fire happened in Sabudrongchu in 1986. But are they bypassing that? Are they diverting from that by using clubs and machetes? And is this now a new modus operandi? These are the larger policy questions, military, tactical questions as well, that the Indian Defense Forces and, of course, the political leadership will have to contend with. But one thing is very, very clear. The Chinese are not going to sit still. In Galwan, it happened 2 years ago. In Yangtze, it's happened just this past week. If this is a new normal, if this is a new pattern, then surely the Indian Defense Forces will be well prepared for it.
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया।
statement whereby he just gave the bare bone details of what exactly transpired at Yangtze when the clash took place. But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
जब तक भारतीय जनता पार्टी की मोदी सरकार चल रही है, 1 इंच जमीन पर भी कोई कब्जा नहीं कर सकता।
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। अध्यक्ष महोदय, हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगा, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हैं? देश की सुरक्षा है।
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया।
Hello everyone, you're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. For the first time since Galwan, clashes between India and Chinese troops were reported in Arunachal Pradesh's Tawang sector, where both sides engaged in a face-off on December 9. The standoff took place at 3 a.m. in the morning when Chinese troops armed with clubs similar to Galwan confronted the Indian forces. Reports suggest around 6 Indian soldiers were hurt and they are receiving treatment in Guwahati, while there were more injuries on the Chinese side. After first accusing India of provoking Chinese troops, the Chinese government has now called for cooperation for better border management, calling for improved dialogue to prevent future scuffles. Remember, this also comes as the Air Force had to scramble jets in the last few weeks to prevent air violations by China over Arunachal Pradesh. But clearly, China was caught off guard by how well prepared India was, given the nature of intelligence that we had managed to gather, as it tried to repeat the Galwan face-off. Here is an overview of what really happened. It was a stealth operation by Chinese troops as they unilaterally tried to change the status quo. On 9th at 3 a.m., over 300 PLA troops intervened in Yangtze, that is the region near Tawang. There was an attempt to capture the icy heights at 17,000 feet. India has an advantage because it is India which is actually patrolling at that height. Initially, there were only 50 Indian troops. Reinforcements were rushed in immediately and over 100 Indian troops gathered when they saw the presence of the Chinese in the Indian territory. And the Indian army then pushed back hard against the Chinese troops. The Chinese soldiers were given a bloody nose. The PLA was pushed back all the way to their command post. A warning was issued in a flag meeting 2 days later. So today, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh addressed both the Houses of Parliament over the clash in the Tawang sector. Rajnath Singh said that China attempted to change the status quo, but the attempt was foiled by our troops. Soon after his statement, ruckus erupted in Parliament after the opposition demanded a discussion, accusing the government of hiding the facts, demanding a deeper discussion, a more elaborate discussion on the situation at the line of actual control. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge hit out at the Prime Minister. saying that China is taking shelter behind a statement where he has said that no one has entered Indian territory. Home Minister Amit Shah hit back at the Congress, accusing it of keeping the military infrastructure at the LAC in shambles while inking deals with the Chinese Communist Party. India may have given a bloody nose to China, but the political war at home here in India is only escalating.
PLA ट्रुप्स ने तवांग सेक्टर के यांगसे एरिया में लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल पर अतिक्रमण कर स्टेटस को एक तरफा बदलने का प्रयास किया। चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है, अध्यक्ष महोदय।
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh informing Parliament that Indian soldiers thwarted attempts by Chinese troops to unilaterally change the status quo in Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang, last week and compelled them to return to their posts. During the confrontation, clashes broke out between the Indian and Chinese side. It happened in a place called Yangtze, about 30 kilometers northwest of Tawang. India has been building border infrastructure here, so have the Chinese. The clash happened on the night between 8th and 9th December. About 300 Chinese troops tried to capture icy heights around Yangtze. If either side manages to capture the heights at 17,000 feet, it would give them visibility up to 25 to 30 kilometers on either side. Hence, there's no need for patrolling in the harsh winter months. More than 2 years after the deadly Galwan clashes, Chinese troops turned to the same playbook. While no lethal weapons were used, PLA troops were armed with clubs, sticks and machetes. Around 6 soldiers were injured on the Indian side. The number of injuries on the Chinese side are believed to be far more.
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से PLA को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया, अध्यक्ष महोदय। हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
But while India stood firm amid Chinese aggression, the opposition saw opportunity to target the government.
And why I say that is that why are they hiding behind the bravery of our Indian soldiers? Where is their political leadership? Where is their bravery?
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
Home Minister Amit Shah countered Congress with this big attack.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया कि राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन को 2005-6 और 2006-7 के वित्तीय साल में चीनी दूतावास से 1,35,00,000 रुपए का अनुदान प्राप्त हुआ था।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगाओ, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हो? देश की सुरक्षा है।
As the war of words continues, are we headed for a full-blown conflict with China?
And in the wake of the Tawang clashes, Indian Air Force is scheduled to carry out a consolidated training exercise this week in the eastern sector. In fact, all the key eastern Air Force stations which are located in Assam, which is Tezpur, AFS, Jorat, AFS, Mohanbari and Chabua in Dibrugarh district will be participating in this training exercise. Is this really linked to the developments in Tawang? We are being joined by Akash on the phone line. Akash, give us the details. Is this really a routine exercise planned in advance?
Maria, it's true that it's a routine exercise, but given the condition and given the clash, it is very important. In fact, we have been given to understand that this exercise is scheduled this week and it is going to happen in the eastern sector. And Maria, it is important because, just a few hours back, we have informed our viewers that how China was constantly violating our airspace, how their drones were aggressively moving towards the Indian positions at the actual line of control in the very same area. So this is very important, and this is coming after Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh's statement where, Raksha Mantri has confirmed whatever happened on 9th of December. So it is very important. And, Maria, this is, essential to mention here that from 16th November to 25th November, we have had several instances when China actually violated the airspace of India, specifically in Arunachal Pradesh. Given all these conditions, this exercise is going to be very, very important when Indian Air Force is going to check the readiness of the aircraft. And yes, it was a routine exercise. It used to happen, every year, but this time it is planned much in advance.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me bring in our special guests this evening. Joining me on the show, General D.S. Huda. Also on the show is Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. General Huda, I'm going to begin with you. India militarily remains vulnerable in the northeast. Given the geographical differences, are we still catching up with the China given our defense capabilities?
So, Maria, let me answer in two ways. One is